All right, all right, all right. Hey ho, let's go. Welcome, my legendary friends, to another fantastic episode of Legends and Losers. And we have an amazing guest today, my dear friend Dushka Zapata, who I'll tell you all about in a sec. Off the top, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to you. You folks have made Legends and Losers a smash hit show. And, that's certainly something we hope for, but we never knew for sure it was going to happen. And well, of course, we do some marketing of the show and we post on social media and do some mailings and that kind of stuff. This is a passion project. We're doing this to make a difference and hopefully have a ton of fun. And I don't know about you, and I know I could speak for Colin. We are having a shit ton of fun doing Legends and Losers. We sure hope you're enjoying it. And what we know is you've made us a smash hit show, and our growth is because you are telling people about Legends and Losers, and you're sharing the show, and you're emailing us, and you're tweeting, and you're sharing stuff on Facebook. And I want you to know how much I appreciate it. This is a passion project. We're doing this for love and hopefully to make a difference. And so whether it's our numbers just increasing exponentially because of how you're sharing the show, or the love notes you send us, I want you to know from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. All right, our guest today, Dushka Zapata. So, you meet people in life, and if you're lucky enough, every once in a while, probably every very rarely rather, do you meet somebody and you go, wow, that's a special person. And that's how I felt when I first met Dushka, when we were working together well over a decade ago now. And, we sort of lost touch for a little bit and came back into contact. And now she's back in my life in a big way. And well, I don't spend a ton of time with her. This may sound like a funny thing to say, but I really get who this person is. And she's just one of those incredibly special people. And I'm grateful she's in my life. So Dushka Zapata. She's got more than 20 years of experience as a marketing, PR, and communications executive, and she used to run big PR firms in San Francisco and Silicon Valley. Today, she's an independent personal brand development, PR, and executive media coach. And she stands alone, in my opinion, as an executive media coach. And she's one of the most important writers working in the world today. And I'll explain why. She's published 3 books, bestsellers each: How to Be Ferociously Happy and Other Essays, Amateur, An Inexpert, Inexperienced, Unauthoritative, Enamored View of Life. And her most recent book, the big hit, A Spectacular Catastrophe, A Spectacular Catastrophe, and Other Things I Recommend. And let me just share with you I wrote a review when A Spectacular Catastrophe came out on Amazon, and I think it sums it up. So let me read to you part of what I wrote. Quote, another life-affirming, fun, heartwarming, and insightful read from one of the most important writers of our time. Dushka is a whole new category of amateur social writer. Dushka writes amazing stories that leave you in a better place, all originally in response to someone's question, most often on Quora.com. She writes from a place no one else does. I think it's because Dushka is connected to readers in a way that few writers could ever have been before, because she's writing in response to people who ask her for her amazing, heartwarming responses as an awesome source of inspiration in their life. And that's what I think makes Dushka so amazing. And so here she is, my dialogue with Dushka. So how are you, Dushka?
Good, and you?
I'm fucking fantastic.
I lost sleep over this podcast.
Why would you possibly lose sleep over any podcast, especially one with myself?
Because I have a traffic jam of things I want to say in my head, and I can't sort through them. So I'm hoping that live with you, they come out straight.
Well, the great thing about Legends and Losers is we can have a traffic jam of ideas, and we can see some zebras and
figure it out.
Go down some rabbit holes and like that. I was about to say chase some naked ladies, but you might not be as interested in that as I am.
I'm not your target audience.
No, you are my target audience for sure, but
I mean, not for the naked ladies part.
Yeah, maybe for naked gentlemen, or nobody wants to see men naked though, right?
I wouldn't mind.
You wouldn't mind?
No.
Oh, okay.
I guess it depends on the men.
Yeah, I'm sure that makes a difference. I think in general, though, women, people paint women naked because the female form is beautiful. You don't see very many naked paintings of men, thank God.
I actually think the naked male form is beautiful.
Well, you know what? I'm so stoked that there are women in the world like you.
And for that matter, I think naked women are beautiful.
Yeah, I agree completely on the naked women.
Yeah, I think they're both beautiful. I think the human body is pretty beautiful. Actually, this is a true story that I've actually written about. I used to go to a gym in the financial district called Equinox, and there were always like a bunch of naked women in the gym because we were all changing to go work out. And I would all like, there's like a protocol that you're not supposed to look, but I would always like sneak peek, especially when people were talking about like, oh my God, look how fat I look or whatever.
Right. You turn around to look and see how fat they were.
Yeah, and I would turn around and wonder what the hell they were talking about. Like, I think most bodies are really beautiful, especially in that environment. Like, people that are already going to a gym and are taking care of themselves. But I think in general, the human body is really beautiful.
Yeah, well, as my friend Bix Bixon, who's on a very recent episode of Legends and Losers, said, by the time you exit the grocery store, if you pay any attention to the magazines and stuff, you kind of feel completely terrible about yourself, right? Because
Well,
you're not
actually,
enough and
speaking of
good
that,
looking enough.
can you see that sculpture?
Yeah, I can. Is it looks like somebody maybe in a yoga pose?
Yeah, it's a dancer, and that's what my mom does. She made it.
Wow. Is she both a dancer and a did you say sculptress? Is
Yes,
that what you'd say?
yes. So I think that the politically correct term is now sculptor, like actor.
Sculptor, like actor, like, yeah.
But
But there's something fun about sculptress, don't you
I
think?
think so too. Yes, it sounds a little like superhero-ish.
It's like, the title chairman. There's a lot of women who are
Woman.
chairman of something. And it's like, well, I guess you could be the chairman of something, but I don't know. Wouldn't it be the chairwoman? I don't know. But there are women who are called the chairman, right? Of whatever.
Yeah, or actor.
Yeah, I guess it used to be actress, but a lot of women are just called actors today, right?
Yep. I'm not the right person to be asking those questions because being from Mexico, I guess my threshold for political correctness is different than someone who was born and raised in California.
Say more about that.
I don't know. People find things insulting that I would never really. It's not so much that I don't think they're insulting; it's that I never really gave it much consideration.
Yeah, well, I mean, in general, George Carlin called it the pussification of America, right? We can't fucking say anything to anybody anymore without people getting upset. Really?
Yeah, I agree. But then again, some things people find very insulting, and I agree, such as Trump saying pretty much anything. But
Well, we do not want to have a political conversation today, but I understand the sentiment. But I do think that we culturally need to grow some thicker skin. It's like, look, the context.
I was going to say, I think intent matters a lot.
Yeah, because a comedian can come on stage and in front of 5,000 people and say, "Good evening, motherfuckers," and everybody laughs, right? And nobody's insulted, and so the context matters a lot.
I think context matters and intent matters. I think that people can say fuck and be super insulting and say fuck and just, the word can just, it doesn't matter. I guess it depends.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to be the guy that says fuck and has people laugh and or pay a little extra attention. But, and I'm a collector of every study that's ever been done that says people who cuss all the time are a lot smarter than people who don't. So I have a lot of
I'm sure you have those studies like ready to hand out.
Yes, I have data science research available on that topic at all times. So what have you been up to, Dushka?
So my book is about to come out.
I know that. I'm very excited. We finalize the cover?
We did. Let me see if I can pull it up and show it to you in a photograph.
Yeah.
But I actually sent it to you by email. Remember when I told you I was going to?
I do. I read it.
Yeah, I said I was going to send it to you, and I actually followed up.
Which is always wonderful when one follows up on what one said was going.
I love it when here it is.
But
I
see,
love
there
it.
could have been some zebras or naked men along the way that might have distracted you from sending it.
Exactly.
Let me take a super close look here on that. So let's just see, what do we have here? Yeah, so we went with this sort of greeny, bluey color.
Yeah, and it looks. I really like it. It looks really great. I like the popcorn one too, but I think that this one is just better.
That one sort of looks like a watery kind of like a
Yeah, it looks like
watercolor
a
vibe,
stain.
right?
It looks like a somewhat catastrophic stain, which is the intent based on the title.
So the title is somewhat catastrophic.
No, it's called A Spectacular
A,
Catastrophe.
a spectacular catastrophe.
A Spectacular Catastrophe and Other Things I Recommend. I love it. It cracks me up every time I see it.
Yeah, no, that is a little bit more, particularly with the subtitle, a little more. I don't know what the phrase I want to use, but maybe a little bit more playful, a little bit more whimsical than your last couple.
The last ones, yeah.
Yeah, this is number 3, is it not?
Number 3, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's thicker. The first one was roughly like 250 pages, 270, and the second one was closer to 300, and this is like 340.
Oh wow.
It's
Well,
super,
you have at least 100 more pages in your new book than in my book.
yeah, yeah. But your book is more, it's more like a trajectory of something, and mine is just short stories.
Yeah.
Or like short answers.
Yeah.
And they're usually quite short also.
I love that I fire up Quora and the first thing I see is a post from you answering a question. How long does it take to write the first draft of a book?
That's what you just did?
Yeah, well, I wanted to go on here and just get an update to see. I haven't looked at your numbers lately.
Yeah,
And,
they're looking good.
yeah,
They
well,
slow down. I keep thinking that they're going to slow down, but they haven't.
yeah, so 67.7 million views of your work on just Quora alone.
Yeah, yeah, and just this month it's been 4.1 million.
Yeah, but who's counting just this month?
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And so, not of course that it's about the numbers, but I just love that you're this new category of writer. I just love it. And I love that we've all known you for so long and knew you in one context. And now you're like this digital social celebrity. And I get to say, I knew her when.
I've actually been recognized in the street a couple of times.
What's that like?
It's so trippy. Once I was in the supermarket and I was wearing my Quora jacket. I have a it says Quora. It's like a really nice Patagonia jacket that has a top writer logo.
Is it embossed or emblazoned in gold or something?
No, it's just
you're like single-handedly the reason that Quora exists, pretty much. Right? I mean, it's an extraordinary world that you occupy on Quora. And actually, I continue to recommend. I recommend that people join Quora so they can read your work.
See, that's the logo on the jacket.
Let me see. Oh yeah. You know what? I think I've seen you wear that jacket. Or
it's actually brand new.
okay. Did you have another one? That logo that's on it looks familiar to me.
Yeah, no. This is like a brand new logo for this.
Okay. Well, then I must have had a couple of scotches then.
Yeah, exactly. I wore it to the supermarket, and a guy walked up to me and said, "Are you really a top writer?" And I was like, "Yep, yep." He's like, "That's very impressive." I'm like, "Thank you." That was it.
That was it.
And then another time I was at a place where they sell chai, and I was standing in line, and
they sell chai, like the tea.
Like the tea, like a specialty chai place.
Yeah.
And I was like standing in line, and I was with boyfriend, and I heard like some squealing behind me, and he right away turned and looked at me and went, "Oh no!" And I looked back, and there was a girl there that went, "I'm sorry to ask you this, but are you Dushka Zapata?" And I was like, "Yes." And they're all like, "Ee!" It was really funny. Oh my God, we can't believe you're here in person. It was so weird. It was really
fun. And so what's that like?
It's just really funny. It seems a little like it's an out of body experience.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time somebody asked you to autograph one of your books?
I do actually.
Yeah.
I do. I know exactly. I went to a Quora top writer meeting. And I walked up to the desk to say, I had been named top writer like maybe like 4 days before. And Quora does 2 top writer meetings a year. And so they're
And
like,
how many writers do they consider to be top writers? Do you know?
nobody knows.
Okay, so it's just whatever they say.
Yeah, I'm going to say, nobody knows, so I don't know the answer, but I'm going to say maybe like there were maybe like 300 people there.
Oh, wow. Okay, so a bigger number than I would have thought.
But also, Christopher, a top writer meeting is fascinating because there's people across every single category.
Right.
Like transgenders, polyamorous, engineers.
What's a polyamorous? Is that
Polyamorous is someone who believes that they can love more than one person at a time, and they have more than one simultaneous relationship where all the parties agree that they all want simultaneous relationships. So it's the opposite of monogamy.
No, it's the opposite of fucking simplicity. And like, when I was in my late 30s, early 40s, it became very clear to me that like a big goal in my life was to have a simple life. And so having multiple spouses, it doesn't sound very simple to me.
No, it really, really doesn't sound simple. And especially when you have different spouses and they in turn have other relationships. But it's pretty darn interesting. And reading about it has been really, really interesting to me. And, talking to people who answer questions about it have been interesting. My point is, you go into one of these meetings and you meet people from like all walks of life and all areas of expertise, and people who are like, I don't know, astronauts, and answer questions about what it's like to walk on the moon, and people who answer questions about what it's like to love more than one person at once, and people who answer questions about what it's like to be like heavily into kink and just everything. And
what is it like to be heavily into kink?
I think it depends on the kink. But it's just fascinating. It's like a really, really interesting world. And it's all people who are very, very different and who all really like writing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And, but I got to believe, and don't be immodest. I mean, in that world, you're the category king in that world. I mean, there's just not very many top writers who have close to 70 million views of their work, I got to believe.
Yeah, I think, I don't know where I belong in like top writer in terms of followers. But I'm going to say maybe the top 10, one of the top 10 in terms of followers. But I don't know that for a fact.
Sure. Yeah.
When I was there, a lot of people were saying, like they would introduce each other and like, who are you? And like, what do you write about? Because Quora is very, like if you have certain subject matters that interest you, the Quora that you see is very different from the Quora that I see. Just a little bit like Facebook, like you follow certain people and your Facebook world is completely different from my Facebook world. Like Facebook to you is very different than Facebook to me.
Right.
And it's similar to that. So you meet people that are really well regarded and are quite famous, so to speak, that you've never encountered. But my writing is across many categories that are kind of universal. So you might not follow knitting, but if you follow relationships, which is pretty broad, you're likely to run into a question of mine. So I think that the fact that I work across categories also counts a lot. And anyway, people were asking me for my autograph as I walked in, and it was really also very trippy. And many people that knew that I was going to be there, because you enter your name on a list that appears on the site, and many people bought my book so that I could sign it.
Yeah.
That was also totally trippy.
And so what's it like to autograph your book and to have people tell you they came to the event just to see you?
It's amazing. It's like a little of a love story. The first guy that ever asked me to autograph his work, I stood up and hugged him. I think he didn't expect that.
Yeah.
Like, wow. And I write a lot about being an introvert, which people sometimes confuse with being shy. So when I hugged him, he was like, oh my God, I thought you were an introvert. He was like, whoa.
You're a great hugger.
Yeah, I love hugging.
Yeah. There's something about you that makes people want to hug you.
I love hugging. I'm actually physical.
Certainly makes me want to hug you.
I love hugging you. I'm a hugger. I hug people. I hold their hands. I like hold their arm. Like I'm very physical.
Yeah, I always have been too. And, the interesting thing, having had a 20-year, career as an executive, I got told very early on, listen, you can't touch people and you can't this and you can't that. And I just said, fuck that. It's who I am. And
yeah, for me too.
I grew up in a very affectionate family. And it's interesting, and I know we have all these rules, and I hate that we're in a situation in our culture where we have to have rules and laws that are predicated on the least common denominator. You know, one asshole tries to blow up a plane with a fucking shoe bomb, and now we all got to take off our shoes, right? It's sort of at that level. But anyway, you know, from a being physical point of view, even in the workplace, you know, I just never. I just rejected that, and I think because I think people could tell the difference between, you know, an authentic
Yeah, one is a
right?
warm hug and the other is a salacious hug. And
Right.
for HR, it's just very difficult to know where to draw the line. Like, how do you turn that into a rule? You know, it's hard.
Well, and you know, of course, you also have to develop that sense for, you know, there's some people you could hug and touch or whatever, and there's some people you shouldn't fucking touch.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is that 50% of the equation depends on where the other person is coming from and has nothing to do with you.
So let me ask you about this.
Yeah.
So let's go from hugging to kissing.
Yeah.
So when a man and a woman meet,
Yeah.
how do you think the decision, maybe they're not meeting for the first time, like they're greeting each other, the decision around, are we going to kiss on the cheek? Are we going to kiss at all? Or are we going to kiss on the mouth? How do you think that happens?
I don't know. That's a great question. Actually, when I first met boyfriend, he used to kiss a lot of his friends on the mouth. And I find kissing on the mouth really personal. Like, to me, kissing someone on the mouth is quite intimate. So him kissing other people on the mouth really threw me. Like, I thought
Does he kiss guys and girls on the mouth?
Just women.
Girls? Yeah.
Just women. I mean, not like a tongue kiss or anything, just like a peck, but like a hello. But I was like, whoa, you just kissed that girl on the mouth. And he's like, yeah. Like, for him, it was just, you know, a way of greeting. And for me, I was like, you know, where I come from, people hug and touch and kiss, but they kiss air, not really the lips.
Right.
And I found it like really just sort of, for me, I found it quite uncomfortable. Like, I thought it was just really, like, if someone came up and kissed me on the mouth, I would probably turn my head, just instinctively.
Yeah. Look, of course, I have no idea what it's like to be a woman, but I think as a man, as you kind of, you know, have whatever embrace or you come close and you're going to have that moment, I just sort of hold a little and just see where she goes. And of course, most women tend to kiss you on the cheek, but I believe it's up to the woman to decide if it's going to be different.
And I think that you holding just for like a beat and giving the woman a chance to make that decision is very like courteous of you. I think that when the guy doesn't wait for you to decide and wants to get something out of the greeting, that's when the woman feels, you know, I think assaulted is too strong a word, but like, that her boundaries have been
taken aback a little. Yeah. And even like the hug, like what kind of hug is it? You know, there's sort of a bit of an air hug, and then there's kind of an in-between, and then there's kind of a bear hug, right? I think the woman sort of gets to decide. I mean, unless you know her really well, but like, yeah.
Yeah, I think that, I also think that boundaries change by day. Like, I think some, you know, I took a course to be a yoga teacher, and I'm certified to be a yoga teacher, but I also took a course in therapeutics and anatomy. So I adjust people. So like, if you did a yoga class with me and your pose was wrong, like I would grab your hips and move you, like I touch people. And I've experienced people being like really comfortable with that, or being really comfortable one day and not the next day. Like, one day you're sore, or you're, you know, something hurts or whatever. And you're like, I really, you know, don't do that. And so I also think that you can't take for granted that someone is comfortable just because they've been comfortable before.
Yeah, you know, for me, it's a function of how well I know them, right? Yeah. So, you know, the way I greet my two sister-in-laws would be very different than the way I would greet, you know, a friend of yours who maybe I'd met a couple times, right? Or, you know, like I may pick my sister-in-law up. You know, I'm not going to pick somebody. Well, because that's where I am with you. I'm I want to give you a bear hug, and I want to pick you up. I want all of you. Exactly. And you and I don't see each other in person anywhere near often enough for me. So, but you sort of got to know that you have permission to do that. Did I fuck something up? Did I not have permission to pick you up?
No, I was like, I think that I was like, I think I like put my arms around your neck and like lifted myself up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and that's always fun too. Like, particularly with, I was in Vancouver a little while ago, and I was there doing a number of things. But while I was there, I had dinner with my adopted brother Jack's family. He was actually out of town, so it was with his wife and his kids. And of course, I love them dearly. And Julia, their daughter, we were meeting at a restaurant, and I had flown in that afternoon and gone to the restaurant. I walked in the front of the restaurant, and and she's, I don't know how old she is. She's a fucking teenager or whatever. I don't know. I can't tell, anymore. But however old she is now, she jumps out of her seat and comes running to the front of the restaurant and like jumps into my arms, right? And so there's something about that that's like, holy shit. She's making it very clear that she's happy to be around Christopher. And, of course, as an uncle, there's nothing better than when the child is happy to see you.
And, being the age that she is, a year from now, she might surprise you by wanting something completely different.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've thought about that a lot with the nieces that I have. Like, where does it start? Or does that ever start? And I had an experience with another niece of mine, adopted niece of mine, but a family that I've known forever, and I love her parents dearly. And so I knew the parents before the kids were born, kind of thing. And she was in Santa Cruz, I don't know, maybe in the last year or so. And she was here with a girlfriend. I don't know exactly how old she is, but around 13-ish.
Yeah.
So right around that age where you might think some of that stuff comes into play. And they wanted me to take them surfing. And, as you can imagine, when you're teaching somebody to surf, you're pushing them into waves and you're doing this stuff, and we're in wetsuits and the whole thing. And I'm like, how's she going to be, and you can sort of fall over each other in a wave and this and that. And so it can get physical. Yeah. And, suffice it to say, not only was she not any different, she was completely trusting.
Yeah.
And
I think it's a testament to you and like how nice you are, and I also think that she's doing well because when you're 13, you're experimenting with your boundaries. You're trying to figure out what feels comfortable and what doesn't, and how to tell other people. You don't want other people to be insulted by the fact you're not comfortable. Like, it's complicated.
Yeah, and I was just glad to know that at least up to that point nothing had changed, and maybe it will. I don't know, but I try to create a space for her that is a safe place. Safe space. Like I do with all male or female, I don't give a shit. Boys can go through it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been looking at some of your stuff on Quora, sort of along these lines. At least that's one that's more recent in my feed. Are jokes at someone's expense sometimes appropriate?
I just wrote that yesterday.
Oh, that was yesterday. Okay. And so, do you want to read this? Do you want to read this for me?
Yeah. Do you want me to read to you now?
Well, you're here. I mean, I can read it, but
I'm happy to. Hang on.
I like it when you read it.
I'm happy to. I'm pulling it up. I actually have some stuff that I want. I don't know. Are we recording? I don't know. Have we started?
Yeah, we are.
Oh, really?
We've been going this whole time, but we're just having a conversation. We're not recording anything.
Okay. I'm going to read you this one, but I have other things I want to read you.
You can do anything you want, Dushka. You are Dushka. That's what we need to get you a T-shirt. This is I am Dushka.
I actually want to read you something else.
Okay. Well, then you don't have to read me this thing about something.
I can, but I want to read you something else because we'll see why when I read it to you.
Okay.
So the question is, have you ever felt like you don't fit in? Okay, so here's the answer. I never fit in. I was awkward. I never knew what the right thing to say was. Believe me, I tried. I didn't understand what to wear or how. I was the last to be picked in gym class. I was seldom invited to parties. When I stood in a corner wishing, as we say in Mexico, that the ground would swallow me. The popular kids always hung out together, a continuous rowdy gathering, a pack with shiny, sleek hair, musky perfume, and the right jeans. They sat at the back of the class. They laughed and jostled and pranked each other. They were so beautiful. There was one girl, blue-eyed, freckled, sandy, lanky, who always made fun of me. She was a bully. She wasn't violent or aggressive, but she was really cruel. I was terrified of her. In my memory, school was hard. I couldn't find my place. I skipped class and slinked around, wishing I could be invisible. One day, not too long ago, this same girl sent me a Facebook invite with a note. I'm from Mexico, so it was in Spanish. It went something like this. Dushka, I haven't seen you in over 30 years. I think of you often, your wit and how comfortable you were with yourself. It was like you were above the effort I had to make to remain popular. I struggled to fit in. I wished I was more like you. What? A part of me wanted to point out how mean she had been, both to me and to others. The knack she had to make me feel small, her impeccable lethal aim. But I couldn't bring myself to. Instead, I accepted her friend request and occasionally see her on my feed. We all harbor feelings of inadequacy and isolation. How real are they? How many people that look good from where we stand are in the grip of these same feelings? It's our insecurities, actually, that possess that impeccable lethal aim. They play tricks on us. It turns out that we are all more alike than we are different.
I love it. And I also love the different interpretation. Who knows what was true at the time, but that's what's true for her and what was true for you now looking back, right?
Exactly. And so I have conversations with you where you say, you know, we're from the island of misfit toys, or I had issues belonging. And we actually have no idea if that's really true. What if other people around us felt like the misfits?
Yeah.
And they felt like we were the ones who were, you know, managing our social interactions, you know, with ease. And I just find that really interesting. I think that recasting what we think is true is a really interesting exercise.
Well, I ask people all the time if they feel like they grew up on the island of misfit toys. And
I think most people would say yes.
a lot of people answer yes. And the other one that blows me away, Dushka, is at a high level, I think there are people for whom they find their place in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And there's people for whom they can't find a place and or there isn't a place. And so they have to make their place in the world. And I always thought that most people felt like they found their place in the world. And I don't have any
They
data.
had to make it, or they had to.
No, they found it.
Huh.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
And,
I think people create their place in the world.
well, that's what I've learned. Is that, you know, I have believed that I had to make my place in the world. I tried to find one, and there wasn't one. But I thought I was in the minority. But as I ask people about it, and you know, do even in speeches, I'll ask people how, you know, raise your hand if you feel one way or the other, kind of thing. I've been blown away by how many people feel like they've had to make their place in the world, that there wasn't one for them. And so, do you think that's just part of the human experience, or what do you think?
I do. I think that by definition, if most people we talk to are misfits, then the definition of misfit is wrong.
Yeah.
We perceive ourselves to be the misfit and the other person to be the popular one. And that holds true for most people, which has to recast the way that you perceive yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And we think that you know, different books impact different people over time. But as a kid, probably around 13, I guess, I read Catcher in the Rye.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience of reading Catcher in the Rye was, holy shit, there's one other person in the world who feels like I feel, right?
Well, exactly. Exactly. But my point of this story is that we go through life believing things, and the fact that we believe them hurt us. Like, I have this experience and I'm alone, or I was a misfit and no one understood me, or I had to, you know, create my space in the world, which is, I think it's triumphant and wonderful, but it's also painful. And at the end of the day, you think, what if all of that was never true?
Yeah.
I just find that super interesting. And anyway, it's the reason why my book is called A Spectacular Disaster, because it's about disbelieving things that you always believe to be true. What happens when what you think is true that is actually hurting you turns out to not be true?
Interesting. You know, and my mentor and friend, Bix Bixen, who, bless him, was recently on Legends and Losers. He was my first ever sort of personal development or success coach, or whatever you want to call all that stuff, self-help, et cetera, et cetera. You know, at 18, I did this program, and he led it, and he blew me away. Anyway, long story longer, he's back in my life, and he was recently on Legends and Losers. And one of the things he said is, a conclusion is the place where we get tired thinking.
That's awesome. Do you know what Orson Welles said? He said,
Bring me another donut.
No, he said, whether or not you have a happy ending depends on where you decide to end the story.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's very similar. It's like the story can continue or the story can end, and it can be a happy ending or a sad ending depending on where you end it.
And you think he meant that in the context of anybody's life?
Yes.
Yeah.
He did. But anyway, the notion that we are trapped by things that we believe and that they actually trap us and that they don't really exist, I find really fascinating.
Well, and the other one is, why do we believe what we believe? And so another thing that Bick said was most people and companies are living inside of other people's thinking.
That's fantastic.
And so, you know, if you look back in your life, I know when I look back in my life and I think of the disempowering things that got said to me,
Mm-hmm.
I accepted those as, if not 100% true, at least partially true.
Yeah.
And luckily enough, I also accepted some of the very empowering things as true, right? And so it's sort of, which thing do we then want to listen to and accept as us?
I think that the other thing, the reason why we believe things that aren't true is because we listen to our fears. And the reason we listen to our fears is because that's what keeps us safe. So if I say to you, you know, if you go out there and start talking in front of a microphone and other people start listening, you know, you will be a target. You will be exposed. Then you decide not to do it. And then you listen to your fears. And I think that listening to our fears is really primal because it's what keeps us safe. So you have to defy the mechanism inside of you that keeps you safe. And I think that is another reason why we decide to believe things that trap us, because our fears are speaking louder than other things. And there are millions of examples.
How do you think we decide, Dushka, between a fear that is holding us back and that in the parlance of our times is a legitimate fear, so to speak, like, you know, hey, don't jump off the Golden Gate Bridge because that's not a good thing to do, versus a fear that is holding us back, that's something that we should summon the courage to overcome?
So to me, they feel very different. We call both feelings fear, but they feel very different. And to me, one feels like dread, which is me telling myself that that's dangerous. Like, don't walk down the dark alley. You know, mark your boundaries clear with that person that you're working with or whatever. And then fear that is more thrilling, that feels like you're going up a roller coaster and you're like, that feels more like a way kind of a fear, is the one that you should defy. And I think that they're very different. I think one challenges you and makes you step out of your comfort zone, and the other one puts you in danger.
What about unmitigated panic?
I think that unmitigated panic belongs in both categories. And I think that you have to just ask yourself, is this going to make me look like an idiot, which is safe? Or is this going to make me, you know, put me in physical danger?
Yeah, because I mean, I experienced the physical danger fear, you know, not a ton, but on a fairly regular basis, whether it's surfing or martial arts or those kinds of things. I tend to experience it less outside of those arenas. But, you know, we dropped the first Legends and Losers on a Thursday. And I think I shared this with you, you know, on the Tuesday night before that, I mean, I had a full-on, what I can only describe as a panic attack.
I had that with my first book. I completely understand.
Well, and the weird thing is, and I don't mean this to sound any other way, but than to just be, you know, transparent about it. I'm not the kind of guy that gets fucking panic attacks.
No, neither.
Like that's not a place I'm used to being. I'm used to being scared shitless in the water and like, am I going to drown? Or, you know, but you know, I understand those things, right? But in a situation like that, it was a completely foreign, or not, maybe not foreign, but a feeling I have not had in as many years as I could remember.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good sign because it means that you're putting yourself out there, and it means that you're doing something important to you. Like, I think we should feel.
Yes.
But I'd recommend that spectacular catastrophe. Do you see what I mean? Like, I want you to feel that very frequently, and it's catastrophic.
It was fucking horrible. And I came within an inch of saying, okay, we are not launching our.
Absolutely, you're like, forget about this. This is not worth it. You know, I actually, before I launched my first book, I had a panic attack, but I also got very, very sick. It was the first time in years that I actually needed antibiotics. I mean, my body was freaking out. It's terrifying.
Yeah. Talk about physical pain.
Yeah, and I think that it's the creative, it's your mind. It's your mind saying you're in danger. You're putting yourself in danger. You're putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I want to be in danger as much as possible. Like, I want to put myself out there. I want to write things that matter, and it's the only way that I can think of that I can contribute, and that matters to me. So I'm going to do it again and again, even if every time I release a book, it gives me a panic attack.
So if you think about, any 10 things that you write, what number of them, is it one or is it two or is it all 10, or what number of them give you that, like, holy fuck, should I really write this, or I'm uncomfortable, or give you that somewhere along that panic attack scale?
I would say most of them.
And why?
Whenever sort of my theme, if you will, when I write, for anything I write on Quora, not just whatever goes in the books, but anything, like, in general. I mean, there's exceptions where, like, I have a funny story or something happened to me that I thought was amusing. But in general, the theme is something was making me suffer and I figured out how to get out of it, and I want you to have it. And that's what I write about. So usually if something makes me suffer, it means I was either looking at it wrong,
yeah,
something wrong, or, being irrational.
Yeah, you're very rarely the superstar in anything you write. Right?
Never.
You're
Yeah, no, I'm like, this is why this was a mistake, and this is how you can do it so that it doesn't happen to you. So how to not be jealous, or how to not be possessive, or how to challenge what you're believing, or how, all of how to not be stuck, and all of those things require that you question yourself.
Yeah.
The person that you need to doubt is you. You need to not believe everything you think. And that's terrifying, because your brain is wired. Your attitude tells your brain what to see. You are wired to believe what you think. Your ego is very well strung across every corner of your being, wired to believe, so that you believe everything you think. If you don't believe everything you think, you have no ground to walk on. It is very terrifying. But it's the only way to put yourself in a place where you're growing and where you're being creative. So the symptom of disbelieving something or putting yourself out there is what you experience with this podcast, which is a panic attack. And the absence of that means that you are not really living, I think, for me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I haven't done other things to put myself out there, but yeah, this one, for whatever reason, and I, speak in front of 5,000 people, and and not that I don't get nervous to do those things, I do, but I've been doing that stuff for a very long time. So if you say, hey, Christopher, go give a speech, in front of 5,000 people,
that's no longer your comfort zone.
It's no longer outside my comfort.
Exactly. It's no longer.
I mean, in the beginning, I was terrible and terrified, but don't get me wrong, I was absolutely terrified to public speak. But I've done so much of it that, now not so much.
And one day this podcast is going to be something that you're going to do, with incredible ease, and it's not going to be that much fun anymore. And then you'll know that it's time for something different. But not that you're anywhere close.
It's hard for me to believe that, but I'm definitely in the romance stage still with Legends and Losers. But it is funny to be doing something for a relatively short period of time, a few months, and to go, I can't imagine my life without this fucking thing in it anymore.
That's wonderful. Just like I can't imagine. I mean, I look at Quora like I would look at something that someone was paying me to do. I mean, that seriously. I do it every day. I sit down and I write every day. And that is really important to me.
Yeah. No, I understand that.
And it's not about followers, and it's not about, like, it's awesome that I have them, don't get me wrong, and it's awesome that I have views and all of those things that we talked about earlier, but that's really not my motivation. My motivation is I want to write. I really do. And I think I have things to say. And that I can't think of anything more important than that.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And the audience numbers and all that, it's just it's an indicator of the difference that you're making, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I hope so.
And how do you keep up with it, Dushka? I mean, I've started to experience it over the last few months with our book, and now with Legends and Losers, sort of a lot of inbound. I mean, you must just get ridiculous amount of people asking you things or telling you how marvelous you are. Can you keep up with it anymore?
I do keep up with it. I actually.
How the fuck do you do that? I mean.
A lot of people ask me that on Quora.
Yeah, no, I know.
I respond to every comment I get. And it's a lot. It's a very big volume of things. I have some just general ground rules. I don't give people advice. A lot of people contact me for advice. And the reason I don't do that is because I have no context for their lives.
So when they say to you, should I leave my boyfriend or should I quit my job or whatever it is they say, they think you're going to be like a Dear Abby kind of a person.
Yeah,
right?
but here's the thing. I would never be a Dear Abby person because I don't have any context. So if you were to call me and say, hey, should I change my job, or should I leave my wife, or should I have kids? Like I would be like, Christopher, you have those answers way more than I do. Like, don't look for those answers outside of yourself.
Although I will tell you, you told me I should do this long before I knew I should do this. Well, so you'll break your own rule, at least with me.
That's because I'm incredibly nosy. But in general, I try to stay out of people's business.
Oh, I like it when you get in my business. It's great.
I know you.
I want you around in my business. It makes my business fun.
The other day you told me that, Dushka, I know you. Like I might not know like everything you do and everything you say, but I know you. And I feel similarly about you. And to me, you riding off into the sunset and not putting yourself out there, it just didn't make a lot of sense, just in terms of your personality.
I tried to do that, by the way. That was my plan, and I was very comfortable with it.
I remember.
I was like, okay, deliver this book and drop the mic and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, it didn't work out that way.
Yeah, good.
But my adopted brother and co-author Al Ramadan, one of his expressions is, I don't know who that guy is. And that's Al code for like, I don't understand where he's coming
great.
from.
Yeah. That's
right.
Great.
And yeah. And so as I think about what you and I were talking about, like, I don't know everything about you, and you and I don't spend a lot of time doing lots of stuff, but I know who that guy is. You know what I mean? I know who you are. I know exactly who you are.
I feel similarly about you. So when you said, I'm going to walk off into the sunset, I was like, that's dissonant. That makes no sense to me.
Well, instead I did the exact opposite.
Yay! And here we are. Okay.
Although maybe let me ask you about that. Another big thing that was stopping me from wanting to do Legends and Losers was I can't stand the Kardashianization of our world.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of social media. I think it's done a lot of great things for, literally millions of people around the world. And we could talk about that. But the look at me, photos of my fucking eggs at breakfast and the sort of I want attention for the sake of attention.
Yeah.
That whole thing just is so.
Yeah.
There aren't even words for it for me. Maybe you have words for it. And so I just didn't want to do anything that would remotely be like that because it's just so
I think it's
horrible.
I think it's our responsibility to not let it be that. Look,
but did you ever have that worry, particularly as you started to take off? And
no, because I know what my intent is. So I'll give you an example. So on Quora, I'm actually a topic. So there's a topic that says Dushka Zapata, and there's like followers and questions that are all like, what does Dushka do? What does she eat? How does she take care of her hair? How does she perceive the world?
How does she take care of her hair?
I've actually answered that question. But anyway, and so every single question that I answer with a personal anecdote. In other words, I have experience because this has happened to me. I have done this. I have lived through this. But the answer is never, not once, about me. It's about trying to explain something to you through my experience. And that includes answers about me. Because I'm not interested in telling you about me. I'm interested in telling you about me in a way that will serve you. And I think that, at least in my view, saves me from, that kind of like empty navel gazing, which I'm just not interested in. I find it horrible and terrifying and all of the things that you said, but also I find it incredibly boring. I mean, it's just not interesting.
I do too. Like all the celebrity journalism, like even with, actors that I like, I could really give a shit, I like a good Jason Statham movie, and I think he's a handsome guy, and I like action movies, and I like the Bourne movies and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pick up a magazine and read an interview with Matt
I
Damon
actually
or
have
Jason.
never ever followed celebrity news. Like,
Yeah,
I
no, well, I'm not even talking about news. I don't follow
yeah,
any of that stuff.
yeah,
But I mean, like, uh, an actor that I like, I'm not going to read an interview with them.
yeah. I
Because
mean,
I just look at it and go, well, you pretend to be somebody else for a living. Like, that's just not that fucking interesting to
that's
me.
right. But what if one of those people said, for example, here is how I did this, or here's what happened to me and how I overcame that. Like, that kind of thing is more interesting because people
Yeah.
look for universal experiences. So I go out of my way to um to not make it about me, even when the question is about me. Even when the question is, how does Dushka whatever, I go out of my way to answer in a way that would be universally applicable.
And some of your readers do get a little frustrated, right? They want you to just come right out and be a little bit more direct about some of that stuff, don't
Yeah,
they?
or want me to give them advice. Some people get angry because I don't give them advice. And I'm like, I know that it would be really great for you to have someone else tell you what to do with your life, but that would be you. That's your privilege.
Well, here's the other thing I've found about advice, and it may be unique to my experience, but, I was a player in business for the better part of 20 years, and then I was a coach in business for the better part of 10 years. And one of the reasons I retired as a coach is, at least in business, I found that most people don't want to coach. What they want is they want to be validated for what they're already going to do.
Or they want you to tell them what to do so that they don't have the responsibility of making their life decisions.
I didn't find that very much with, venture-backed CEOs, but I get the point.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just decided that for the most part, the context, and again, this is more in the business world,
Yeah.
the context of coaching, and it may be particular to me, but it's kind of bullshit. Because I have no interest in just sort of having a conversation about making somebody feel good about what they're already going to do.
Yeah. What I find valuable is when you see things about someone else that the other person can't see. For example, you said, Dushka, you knew that I wanted to do this before I knew. And to me, that's helpful because I'm like, I see you. I know who you are. And I think that you riding off into the sunset is not going to work for you at all. And this is what I see. Take it or leave it. And then coaching becomes useful.
That's very, very powerful. And of course, if this happens in your life, then it gets even more powerful, which is, in my case, in this example, you were one of, I don't want to say many, but a handful of people really encouraging me to do this,
Yeah.
including my wife, who was like, you have to do this.
Yeah.
And so, when, in particular, when people who know who you are, to use Al's term, are triangulating on something, you got to fucking listen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you see someone that you really love and you're like, I'm not going to in any possible way tell you what to do, but I do want to tell you what I see. And I feel like you're going on the, you're on the wrong path for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to read you another answer.
Please do.
Because I just really love the question. And I think it's very aligned with what we are talking about. So the question is, how can I be limitless? Which is, I think, a slightly different angle of the subject that we're talking about, which is defying what you believe, right? Taking something that you believe in and defying that. So the answer is, I was having coffee with a friend. She was telling me she was stuck. There was no way she could get a job, not in her current condition. To which I eloquently said, what? Dushka, she said, I'm 3 months pregnant. How on earth, I said, would that stop you from getting a job? Go prepare, give the best interview you possibly can, and see how far you get. A month later, she had the job. Then she got paid through maternity leave, after which she returned to work. The thing is, I catch myself thinking like her all the time, convinced that there's so much out there that I can't do, because it wouldn't work, because others have tried it and failed, because it seems crazy. And that's when I remind myself that I'm limitless. Am I saying limits don't exist? Am I telling you that forces such as gravity are only an illusion? Of course not. What I'm saying is that there's so many things out there that do limit you, that it's doubly important for you to pay no heed to the ones that exist only in your mind. In your mind, be limitless. Don't ever allow your own assumptions to stop you. The whole world is ready to do that for you. Which reminds me of the comic strip Garfield. John, his owner, finds both Odie and Garfield up in a tree. But Odie, he says, dogs can't climb trees. To which Garfield replies, it's amazing what one can accomplish when one doesn't know what one can't do.
Yeah, I love that. I really do. And the thing I find myself thinking about that all the time now is, I remember watching the Super Bowl,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, piss off people who don't like the Patriots, but that comeback was incredible.
Yeah, I know nothing about sports, so I'm just going to sit here.
That's okay. You'll just pretend. Yeah. But there was this incredible comeback in overtime, like had never happened before. And the other one that blew me away was Lady Gaga. And did you happen to see her performance?
I actually did.
Yeah.
I adore her. I think she's super talented.
Yeah. Well, what happened for me, so I know some of her music. I wouldn't say I'm a fan. I don't like her, dislike her, or whatever. But, I kind of get what she's about and stuff and think it's cool. But I didn't pay much attention to her. And I thought the performance was just beyond legendary. I mean, she starts by jumping off the top of the stadium, and it just goes from there.
Yeah.
And then so I Googled her. And I can't remember exactly how old she is, but she's in her early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a niece who's around that age. And I said to Carrie, I said, she's Holly.
Yeah.
And so my point, though, is you see these people who do these legendary things, and you think, oh, well, she's Lady Gaga, or he's Tom Brady, or who.
They're us.
Yeah, she took a shit today.
Absolutely.
Right. And I sat there and I thought, this is a 30-year-old woman who did all the things you need to do to become what she's become.
Yeah.
And then imagine this over the top extraordinary performance. And I thought, you know what, that is the result of one person. Just a person did that.
Yeah, exactly. So her saying, why not?
Well, and the thing that's amazing about whether it's about an artist like that, or you pick up your iPhone or your Android phone and you look at what this thing is, and to me as a kid growing up in the 70s, this thing's a Star Trek communicator.
Me too. I always say that. I'm like, this is incredible. Whenever I play with an app, I'm like, this is crazy. Whenever I call an Uber, I'm like, this is insane.
This is insane, right? But the thing that really blows me away about it is human beings had a thought. And then this fucking thing happened.
Yep.
Right. And it's whether it's Lady Gaga, Tom Brady, or the iPhone, or any other legendary human achievement. And for some reason, I'm leading up to a question. For some reason, you and I as human beings disconnect ourselves from all that legendary shit other human beings have done. It's like, well, we forget that just one person or a group of people got together and made the iPhone, or Lady Gaga got in front of millions of people and did this incredible thing, or Tom Brady won the Super Bowl in overtime. Like, that's just a person or a group of people who did that.
Absolutely. And conversely, the person who's sitting in a job that they hate, pissing their life away and saying, I can never leave this job because I can't. I have to provide for my family. That sounds incredibly reasonable. I stayed in a job. To be fair, I really liked it, but I was convinced that if I left, I would not be able to afford it. And I'm fine. So we live in prisons of our own making. And it's just so true. Just like Lady Gaga lives in a harness of her own making, that allowed her to jump off the stadium.
And I love that. There's this great line. I forget which song it is now. It's a Dixie Chicks song where Natalie sings something like, and I'm wanting or waiting for the comfort of my chains.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And back to the fear thing that I was telling you, right? Like, it's like, if it keeps you safe, then it sounds like it makes sense. And look, of course that, not every dream is available to every person. Like, I'm not talking about fantasy. I'm saying we believe things that keep us trapped that don't actually exist.
Well, and the interesting thing about being a human being as opposed to being some other animal is we can have a conversation and we can declare that tomorrow is going to be different than today, or that the next second is going to be different than the last second.
Yep.
And yet, some of us don't take advantage of that.
I agree. And I think some of us don't know that we can. I think reality is very, very, very flexible. And I think that we create it with our thoughts. And as such, we can bend it with our thoughts. And if you don't believe me, look at that girl jumping off the stadium.
Yeah.
How many people do you think were like, she could jump off the stadium, but you can't do that? How many people do you think were like looking at her and going, I can't believe that this is actually happening?
Yeah, it's crazy. I was just checking the quote. I wanted to make sure I got it right. So Norman Cousins said, the tragedy of life is not death, but what we let die inside us while we live.
Do you know his story?
I don't.
So he was, I don't remember, I think that he was a doctor, but he was diagnosed with cancer of the collagen.
Of the collagen?
Yeah.
So all your connective tissue, essentially?
Everything that basically glues you together is cellular level. And they basically were like, you're dying, you're done. And he decided that because he was done, and because there was nothing that he could do, he decided that he would experiment with himself and see if he could cure cancer with laughter. And he wrote a book called The Power of Laughter or something like that. It's not.
Yeah, I'm looking over his the Wikipedia page to see if it's maybe in here.
Yeah. He wrote a book. I have the name of his book on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, he died many years later of other causes.
He did not die of cancer.
He did not. Even though he had like stage 4 cancer of the collagen. That's kind of how I remember the story, but I haven't read.
Yeah. It is interesting. And yet, so what do you think it is that holds us back, that makes us sort of crave the comfort of our chains?
I think fear. I think we want to be safe. We were wired to be safe.
But even when we know we're doing things that are not good for us?
Such as?
Well, if we're in a bad relationship or a bad job, or we're not eating healthily, or
I think that if you're in a bad
exercising,
relationship,
or
your
we're
brain
not spending
says,
enough time with our family, or all the things that we get caught up in the modern world, and we can't seem to break free of.
But when you're in a bad relationship, your thoughts aren't, I have to get out of this bad relationship to be in a good relationship. Your thoughts say, I will get out of this bad relationship and always be alone. And that's the thought that you believe. And therefore, it's safer to be in a bad relationship than be alone forever. How many times did you break up and think, I will never find anyone else? Like, at least at some level.
Oh, I mean, for sure. Certainly as a kid. And, I was separated and then divorced in my late 30s, early 40s. And I absolutely, I met my first wife, Christine, when I was very young. We got married when I was 21 years old.
Yeah.
And by the way, I loved her then and I love her today. And she's an amazing woman. I'm so glad we have an incredibly powerful relationship today. But anyway, when we got separated, I thought, well, no one's ever going to know me like she knows me. And I don't know if anybody could ever love me like she loves me, because we grew up together. We created our lives together.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, absolutely.
And instead, you get to keep the love that you have with her. You don't lose it, even though you think, I will break up and I will lose this. So you don't lose it. You get to keep it, and you get to create new love. So you think
I was lucky enough that that's absolutely what happened for me.
Yeah. So my point being, you thought you were trapped, and you thought that the options were all lost, and they weren't.
Yep, that's true. I mean, it's so interesting how your EQ and your IQ fight with each other, right? So, my IQ, so to speak, said, there's a lot of women in the world. Like, come on. But emotionally, you go, that's the place where you land, or it's just certainly where I landed.
Yeah. I think that it's about, the book I was telling you about, Norman Cousins, is called Anatomy of an Illness.
Wow.
Where he writes about, after being like a really famous journalist, he wrote this book called Anatomy of an Illness, about how life-threatening illnesses can be addressed through humor. Like basically the power of the importance and power of pleasure and laughter and enjoying your life.
Isn't that interesting? It's reminding me a little bit of Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah, that was a great book too.
Oh my God, unbelievable! Boy, don't you ever want to? You just want to thank these folks for writing these books. Holy moly, we get to build our lives on top of their thinking.
Yeah.
But if I remember correctly, and I'll be paraphrasing, but I think he says there's three sources of meaning. There's the experiencing or enjoying of something or someone. There is the accomplishing of something. And the third one, if I remember correctly, is what he called truly unavoidable suffering.
Yes.
As opposed to the bullshit, we go to the bar at the end of the week and talk about what an asshole our boss is and we're suffering. Not the I am a victim bullshit. The
distinction between fake suffering and real suffering is I think a little bit different than complaining about your boss in a bar. And I think it's actually really interesting. I'm going to explain it to you with my dad dying, my dad being really sick. So my dad was super sick and he died a couple of years ago, and his illness was real and it hurt a lot and he died, right?
Yeah.
There were a lot of things that I felt as he was dying that were a product of my imagination. So I thought, oh my God, he has cancer, and what if he's in horrible pain? Like the thought of him being in horrible pain like devastated me. I'm going to say that again. The thought of him being in horrible pain devastated me. He never was in actual horrible pain.
Yeah.
I never knew that he wouldn't be, but that was me suffering because of my thoughts and not suffering because of what was actually happening. I was like, he's dying and we have a super complicated family. And what if we all end up fighting with each other? And that's not what happened. And he was, financially really successful. And when he got sick, he spent so much money on doctors. And I was like, what if we can't afford to pay for his care towards the end?
Yeah.
That was so terrifying to me. I was like, what if we all end up
bankrupt
taking care of him? And that was like, it just literally kept me up at night. I was like, what if I can't take care of him? Like, what if I run out of money and can't take care of him? And that never happened. So if I compare the pain that actually was there with my dad dying and all the suffering that I did that I was absolutely needless and only happened in my mind, and maybe in all our minds that never happened, is the difference between pain and suffering. And pain is real and it really exists, but suffering is stuff that you do to yourself that doesn't actually exist.
That's how you distinguish the two.
Yeah.
Pain is as a result of something, what would you call it? Real? How would you?
Yes, pain is.
Or if you go back to Frankl, it's unavoidable suffering, something that actually fucking happens to you.
Exactly. And then there is the swirl of drama that you wrap around it that is really hard not to, but that you do, and it doesn't actually exist.
Our story about it and how we work ourselves up about it.
Exactly. Another like way more trivial example would be, I injure myself somehow, like I cut myself, and the actual cut hurts and it's painful and it's bleeding and it's, I might need a few stitches. And the other part of me that is like, oh my God, did I get my tetanus shot? What if this ends up killing me? Like there's this like drama of the story. And I think that makes you, it's real. It makes you suffer a lot, but you don't need to allow yourself to get swept up by all the things that you think are going to happen. Most of what we worry about doesn't actually take place.
And so how do we, on one hand, it's good to scenario plan for the worst case scenario, right?
Why can't we scenario plan for the best?
Well, I think we should do both, right? In sports, there's a lot of sports psychology around visualizations and how powerful they are. And, when we had Colton Brown on the show, the Olympic judoka, he talked about how powerful visualizations are. And the interesting thing about, at least the thinking that I'm aware of with sports visualizations is, you don't want to just visualize yourself, if you're Colton, winning the gold medal in judo. Mm-hmm. You also want to visualize yourself going through what you need to go through to win that gold medal. And, some of there is going to be some pain along the way. And there are going to be, guys are going to get them on the ground and challenging and bad things might happen. And so by, if you will, accurately visualizing those things and then seeing how you're going to come through those things, you ground yourself in a reality that you can then align your vision for the future with what actually happens.
Yeah.
So I think that's different than getting all spun up and, wrapped around the axle about all the negative things.
Yeah, I think that you can get spun up, but I also think in my experience that assuming, I don't know about sports or about winning a gold medal, but the assumption that imagining the worst case scenario will prepare you, I think is a fallacy. I think that life is so unpredictable that you cannot imagine your worst case scenario, that you just can't, you don't have the ability to think of so many variables. And what you're actually doing is living in a state of constant stress for no reason. And the best case scenario is equally plausible. So I would rather teach my brain to think of the best case scenario and live a life of 1,000 possible positive outcomes instead of thinking of the worst case scenario and live completely stressed, not knowing exactly what's going to hit me.
Well, I mean, Dushka, fuck a meteorite could hit the planet any minute now.
100%. We would never plan for that,
right.
While accounting for God knows how many things. Yeah, sometimes I look at the New York Times and I see like news about space stuff and I'm like, wow, all the time that Trump was winning, we could actually get hit by an asteroid and it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, and there's suns blowing up right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't know, that blows my mind, but I'm not a physicist, but that stuff fascinates me. And I don't even play one on TV. So is there anything else that was on your mind to read today, Dushka?
No, I think, I was in this theme of like what the things that happen in our mind and the difference between what actually like were we misfits? Like, is that actually true?
Right.
And really, like, we really can't get out of the job that we don't like? Like, is that actually true? And I have one more scenario.
Yes.
So the question is, I want to change my life. Where is a good place to start? And this is my favorite example of the world that we live in that doesn't actually exist. My answer is, I ran into a friend a few days ago and was so very happy to see her. We usually hug each other tight, but this time she seemed to be someplace else. I briefly wondered what I did that could have irked her. I ran through my mind what had taken place the last time I saw her. I couldn't think of anything. It really bugged me. I found out this morning that when I saw her, she was dealing with a family emergency. She had indeed been somewhere else for reasons that had nothing to do with me. There was a story I inadvertently fabricated, and then there was what was actually going on. Between my story and hers, there was a gap. What is that? What is that space that lies between the assumptions that we make and what is actually happening? That space is dangerous. It creates most misunderstandings. It separates us from every one of our relationships, even the one we have with reality. What would it take to narrow that space, to someday obliterate it forever? If I wanted to change my life, that's what I would start
with. I love it. And Dushka, I'm reminded of something that Bix taught me, when I was a young man. And that was the distinction between the facts about what happened and my story about what happened.
Yeah.
And to this day, when people confuse those two things, it can irritate me. And my favorite irritation of this, and it happens almost daily, is in the morning, I like to turn on the local news, get the weather report, kind of see what's going on, all that stuff as I'm getting ready for my day. And when the weather woman or man comes on and she says, today's going to be a nice day in Santa Cruz.
You're like, what does that mean?
I just think, fuck you. That is your story. That's your interpretation. What I want is today it's forecasted between, 58 degrees, which is what it is now. And we're going to have a high of 67 degrees, et cetera, et cetera. And it's high tide at such and such a time and so forth. Give me the facts about what's forecasted and let me interpret whether that's a nice day or they say, well, you should bring a sweater today. Don't tell me whether I need to bring a sweater.
But here's the crazy thing, Christopher. We live in a reality created by our insecurities. So we live concerned, like, what did I do? What happened? Why did I make this person angry? Why does this person not love me anymore? Why am I irritating him? And most of the time, it has nothing to do with us. And I find that so interesting too. Like in order to be like happy and successful and like all of the positive things that we want for ourselves, we need to get out of our own way.
You know, it's interesting. I had an experience in my life over the last few years with someone that I cared very much about, and worked very hard uh, to, um, be a good friend to this guy, and to have this. I wanted him to like me, and I
Mhm.
wanted to be a good friend. And over time, it occurred to me that, like, I can't make this guy like me.
You can't make anyone do anything.
And so, like, all this effort that I've put into, like, managing how this person saw me and trying to create what I thought was the right impression for this person and all that, I just thought, well, like, I ended up in a place where this guy didn't particularly like me very much in the end anyway. And I was like, well, I don't think this guy ever liked me. Why did this even become important? And then I went to the place where I said, fuck him for not liking me. Right. And so, but it's so fascinating, this point we fall into this trap, and you could do everything you think you should do to get this person to feel or think the way you want them to about you. And even when you do your best job at that, they're going to think and feel however they think and feel about you regardless.
So let me put it in even more beautiful terms. Love
Please.
and friendship are like gravity. I don't have to make an effort to keep my feet on the ground. I don't have to do anything to get someone to like me. I don't have to do anything to get someone to love me. Love and friendship are not a reward. You're my friend because of who I am. I don't need to do anything to win your friendship. I don't need to do anything to get someone to like me. The moment you start putting things in place to actively get others to do something, that is the beginning of an unhealthy relationship. You need to do less and watch everything right itself.
But isn't it interesting, if so many of us feel like we grew up on the island of misfit toys, therefore we don't fit in, therefore we have this thought that says, I need to be different to fit in. And so we fall into this trap. Yes?
Yes, and I think that that's why it's so important to unbelieve it. That is why it's so important to question what we think, because we create problems that don't exist, and the solution to the problems that don't exist is what begins to trip us.
And what's that solution?
Well, for example, saying, I'm a misfit and therefore I don't deserve anyone's love and therefore I have to earn it. And then look at what happened with your friend, like this description of like, I did all of these things and orchestrated how I would be seen. And in the end, he didn't like me anyway.
Yeah.
So if you had done nothing, you would have ended up in the same place. So when it comes to love and friendships, you don't have to do anything to get people to be your friends or love you. They either do or they don't. And I think that that's really freeing.
It certainly has been for me. And, it's like when we decided to do this show, I just said, all right, well, fuck it. I'm going to just let my crazy off the chain. I don't give a shit. Not that I ever really held back that much anyway, but, I went listening to the first couple of episodes, I'm going, oh, fucking A. Would you stop talking about fucking dinosaurs, you dumb fuck? Like, this is getting ridiculous, right? I'm like, well, okay, so the whole world knows I'm in love with my fucking chickens. Who gives a shit?
It all works out.
Yeah. Well, Dushka, before we wrap, is there anything else on your mind right
I
now?
think I'm good. I think I got through the traffic in my brain.
Awesome. I love to play mental bumper cars with you.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me and for making this so easy and so much fun.
Well, I love you, Dushka, and I think you're a huge gift in my life, and I think you're a huge, huge gift in the world. So thank you.
And I love you. Thank you very much for talking to me.
Bless you, Dushka. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Wow. Thank you again, Dushka. You're amazing. And if you like this episode with Dushka Zapata, you probably would enjoy our first episode with Dushka Zapata. It's actually, we called it episode 1, and it's technically our second episode. We called the first one episode 0. All right, a couple of shout outs. Number 1 to my buddy and colleague, Ramsey Smith. And Ramsey, I'm so stoked that you are into Legends and Losers. And Ramsey recently wrote, I believe it was on Facebook, if I'm not mistaken, that he thought Legends and Losers was, quote, crazily interesting, an hour of ramble to make you wiser. I love it. Crazily interesting. And I want to send a shout out to Tom Schwab, and Kara, and all of the great people at Interview Valet. Tom's my buddy, and he and Kara are my agents, so to speak, and they help deal with particularly getting me on podcasts that are a good fit at Interview Valet. And Tom sent, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see this very cool. He took the Legends and Losers logo and he turned it into a puzzle. So I don't know if this is cut. You can see the puzzle parts here. You can hear it rattling if you're listening, but I'm not sure what puzzle we're putting together here, Tom, but I know you're an important part of it. So thank you. This is very cool. All right, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. This podcast is not free. It costs you 2 minutes to give us a legendary review. You can find us on Twitter at Legends Losers. And we'd love it if you joined us on facebook.com/groups/legends and losers. And we have a special request we'd like to make. We'd like to ask you to invite 5 of your friends to our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/legends and losers. If you do that, send an email to blackhole@legendsandlosers.com and put in the subject line 5 friends. And we will, for free, email you the complete transcript to the amazing episode with Bixen, still one of the most popular Legends and Losers. We would like to thank HarperCollins, Play Bigger, How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create and Dominate Markets. Our friends at Equity Directory, connecting startups to the talent and resources they need to build a legendary business. Our dear friend, Tim Rode, and everybody at One Life Fully Lived, the nonprofit helping you dream, plan, and live your best life. Brian Rocha, we love you. The great book from Dushka Zapata, Amateur, an inexpert, inexperienced, unauthoritative, enamored view of life. Dushka Zapata. NetSuite, #1 in Cloud ERP, Get Next Ready. Our dear friends at Mayo Technology in San Jose, California, Mixed Method Recovery. Manny the Mechanic will put you back together. Bixen 2, we help executives hack the future at Bixen2.com. The great podcast, Read to Lead, with our friend Jeff Brown. Doctors Without Borders, saving lives in the worst part of the world. Zoom technology. Imagine if Skype and WebEx had a legendary baby. It would be Zoom. Check it out at zoom.us. Trade-off, why some things catch on and others don't. The bestseller from my dear friend Kevin Maney. Spiro, the sales app for salespeople and sales managers who like to make money at spirohq.com. Wild Ride, Wild Ride Inside Uber's Quest for World Domination, the new book by Adam Lashinsky. And our dear friend, Brother James, whose t-shirt I've got on today, motivational music to make your event legendary at brother, BROTHA, James.com. Today's information is provided to you solely for informational purposes. Warning, this oddcast does contain nuts. This oddcast is a sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network. Please share the shit out of it. Teach creativity. Support your local peach farmer. George Carlin was right. In the event of a water landing, this oddcast may be used as a flotation device. Listen to the legendary Chris Cornell. Introduce 2 people you love to 2 podcasts you love. And hey, we hated American Airlines. Well, we hated them too. But especially we hated United Airlines decades before it was cool. When you're done listening to this podcast, please be kind and rewind. And don't forget, this oddcast really ties the room together. That's it. Our apologies to Bill McDermott, CEO of SAP. Sorry, Bill. We just ran out of time for you. Be legendary, friends.